I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. All right, so Joe Biden is in a scramble to deal with the high gas prices, which it's not looking good for the Democrats going into the midterms because they created this disaster, and yet they keep trying to pawn it off as though it is all Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia. I mean, the Democrats just love to blame everything on Russia, and especially on Putin. That's not to say that Putin is some glorious, wonderful person, but he does seem to be the Democrat scapegoat, and Russia just isn't having any of that. Now, 92% of Americans have polled that they think that Joe Biden's gas crisis is a serious problem in America right now. And really, the Democrats have tried very hard to get the American people's focus off of the gas prices, but they cannot shake that focus because, after all, when people are every day going to the gas pump and seeing those $5 and up price tags on a gallon of gasoline, it's affecting everyone and it needs to stop. And even your people that don't tune into politics are starting to take notice. And really, you can't help but blame the Democrats when this is the direct result of their policies. Joe Biden, the minute he gets in, what does he do? He shuts down the pipelines. He causes all of this disruption in oil and gas. Immediately when Biden got in, I saw even my gas bill, because we have like a big propane gas tank, that shot up through the roof immediately when he got in, because he decided to push these Green New Deal policies, these climate change environmentalist policies that were going to have real lasting effects on Americans, and it has had lasting effects on Americans. So they are in a scramble because we're approaching midterms. They are panicking because everyone's polling that they're not happy with Biden, they're not happy with the Democrats, and so maybe people will just decide to vote Republican GOP because they can't handle the food shortages, the high gas prices, and essentially the consequences of voting for Democrats. Now, that doesn't bring into question or doesn't essentially address the election fraud discrepancies, how many people actually voted for Joe Biden. That's a story for another time. But right now, we're going to go into the press conference that was held today by the White House with Karine Jean-Pierre, his press secretary, where, first they obviously have this other woman speaking more on gasoline and what's going on with the gasoline prices. And the Biden administration is proposing a 3-month gas tax, federal gas tax and state tax holiday. Now, I don't know how he's going to get these various states to all go along with his proposed gas tax holiday, but it seems as though this is their attempt to try to put all of the blame also not on them, but on the gas and oil companies, on on the GOP, the Republicans, and say, well, if they don't accept our 3-month gas tax holiday that we want to do, it's all on them. It's all their fault. So this is probably just a political stunt for the midterms, but let's go over this press conference that they literally just had today.
$7.71. If you went to France, you'd be paying $8.49. If you went to Canada, you'd be paying over $6 per gallon. If you went to Singapore, you'd be paying over $9 per gallon. This is happening around the world. And President Biden, like all other leaders around the world, are grappling with this for their citizens. And the president is doing everything he can to reduce prices for American families. So as you heard today, the president is calling upon Congress to suspend the national gas tax for the next 90 days. Suspending the gas tax, is going to...
So if you notice, they're trying to say, oh, because Europe has $7 a gallon gasoline and the UK and also these other countries have higher gas prices, therefore it's not just the US. Therefore, this is not Biden's fault. Well, we've already known that Europe, the UK, they have been known for having higher gas prices. So for them, that's not really too off from what they normally have. So are they just saying that they're okay with Americans now having to pay the same outrageously high prices that Europe has been paying for gasoline? Is that because we're just abandoning the petrodollar or something? This is ridiculous. Bring the gas prices back down to what they used to be. There's no reason why gas needs to be $6 or $5 or $7 a gallon in America when just previously in 2020, before Joe Biden and his climate change agenda administration got in, gas prices were below $2. So I'll take the $2 gas back, please. And I'll take the mean tweets with it, because these people need a rude awakening and they need to be told how it is. Exactly.
Provide families immediate relief from this Putin price hike. Of course, suspending the federal gas tax on its own will not solve the problem. It's why the president is also doing several other things. One, he's calling upon states as well to consider doing gas tax holidays on the state side. He's urging oil companies to use their profits to increase output. He's calling upon the industry to pass along the decrease in oil prices, which we have seen at the barrel level over the past week, for example, at the pump. And he is demanding that the industry come to the table with some solutions on refinery, which is what is going to happen tomorrow when I'll be meeting with the biggest refiners. Collectively.
So what is going to happen with this federal gas tax and state tax holiday that he's proposing? And like I said, I really believe that this is his attempt to put it all on the states and to say, look, the GOP is not willing to play ball in lowering the gas prices. And look, we called a big meeting with the oil and gas companies and they're just making out like bandits. It's all their fault. They're having these huge profit margins, when in reality, from what I've heard talking to people in the oil and gas industry, that's not the case. So to some degree, taking away the state tax on gas, that might be a solution there, and it might actually help. But they're estimating that it's probably going to be about maybe 18 cents a gallon. So even if we're still at $5 or $6 a gallon, that's not much relief, given that gas prices have essentially doubled or tripled in some areas from what they used to be. So it's not really going to have that big of an effect. However, what I do predict is I predict that we're going to see people in a mad panic, just like you would see on Black Friday after Thanksgiving. You're going to see all these people going to the gas pump and just like lines and lines, and you might actually see some fuel shortages in some areas because people are just going to all rush to go buy gas on that day or during that time period, right when that happens. So we might see that. We might see people start to stockpile gasoline, where you see people roll up with those big giant barrels. So what kind of effect that is going to have on the gas market in general, I don't know. It might actually cause more of a supply issue. It might create more scarcity, therefore driving the price higher after the tax holiday essentially ends. So I don't know if this is the best idea, but it sure is when he wants to have it for 3 months, which is leading up to the midterms. So it's a good political strategy. It's not the best economic strategy.
We know that these steps will save American families their hard-earned dollars every time they fill up their gas tank. Of course, this sits in a context because the president has said that he is willing to use the full span of his authorities to help lower prices. Just to remind you, of course, he's used the biggest tool at his disposal, which is our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, releasing 1 million barrels per day to try to stabilize supply, even as demand increases too, especially with this summer driving season. He has also rallied other countries to release from their reserves as well. Collectively, about 240 million barrels are being released from reserves around the world. And he's increased the share of biofuels in gasoline that can help lower prices at thousands of gas stations. And of course, at the same time, we are working to save money for people, have people save money by cutting other essential costs. For example, help with heating bills, weatherization, other ways that citizens are trying to grapple with these high fuel prices, energy efficiency, rental assistance, for example. The fact is that no president alone can control the price of gasoline, and we need more players at the table. So the president's asking Congress to act, he's asking states to act, he's asking the oil and gas industry to do their part as well. And I will say that many domestic producers have been heeding the president's call to increase domestic supply in terms of at the wellhead. We, some I know have made the claim that this administration is in the way of domestic production, but the numbers here are inarguable. We are now at close to record levels.
So obviously there's a problem here, and the Biden administration doesn't want to deal with it. They want to just temporarily say they're doing something to address it leading up to the midterms and hope that American people are going to be too dumb and foolish to fall for that, essentially. So let's go on. Senator Mike Lee had a very interesting statement that he had on the whole gas tax holiday, and he really goes into how he thinks this is just political. It's a cover-up. It's the Democrats' attempt to essentially push us all into a trap, essentially. So let's go ahead and hear what he has to say.
The predictable, foreseeable, and in fact intended result of President Biden's energy policies, which have as their intended outcome driving up costs of fossil fuels, safe, affordable.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on here.
Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, member of the Energy and Judiciary Committees. Great to have you in focus. I want to start with the gas tax holiday, and it would be 90 days, 3 months, 90 days. And the election, the midterms, are 139 days away. So Biden would have to capitulate and put the gas tax back into play just days before his party goes to the midterms. That seems political suicide to me.
It does, and it is. This is part of a shameless and feckless cover-up operation. Look, this is the predictable, foreseeable, and in fact intended result of President Biden's energy policies, which have as their intended outcome driving up costs of fossil fuels, safe, affordable, reliable, in America, plentiful fossil fuels to transition into other foreign-made sources of energy that can't easily be transferred into automobiles. This is a big problem. So he's wanting us to cover that up by shifting around some tax revenue. It's, number one, a drop in the bucket, wouldn't really offer meaningful relief. As one of my colleagues just noted, 6% of the increase in the price of fuel is represented by the 18.4% federal gas tax. This is a disaster all the way around. He wants us to cover it up.
You know, I wonder, Senator, if this backfires in some way, too. I mean, some economists, and we were just reporting this through Jackie Heinrich, say this could drive demand back up when Americans are getting ready to hit the road. Maybe some of them will say now, well, I'm saving 18 cents. Let me buy the gas now while I can, and we can hit the road, which drives us into potential shortages, doesn't it?
Yes, it absolutely does, especially given that President Biden, look, he canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He has shut down oil and gas leasing. He's claimed to have lifted the moratorium, but it's still in place with regard to 80% of all onshore leasing operations. And as a result, these oil companies don't have quite enough to develop. And he says he wants more, but then he takes away from them the ability to produce it. He says he wants more refining capacity. If he really wanted to do something about it, maybe he ought to lift his moratorium, and maybe he ought to push legislation that would make it easier and more affordable for us to build a refinery. We could pass one of the reform measures, like legislation that I've introduced that would streamline the approval process. But no, instead, he wants to shift money around and cover this up with a tax holiday.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. If he wanted to do something about this, that isn't very green of him if he doesn't let the prices continue to go up. And he's got to answer to that far left side of his party this close to the midterms to help his, you know, downstream from the White House as Democrats win. Yet he does this and it hurts them. Back and forth, back and forth. Let's get to this. The president and White House officials have been pushing the recession is not inevitable talking point.
So the Democrats want to keep us all poor. They want to keep us dependent. They want to essentially destroy our economy so that we're more malleable, more easy to control. And meanwhile, we see this blame where they're blaming everything on everyone else but themselves. They want to blame the corporate giants, everything else. There was a hearing and we had the Federal Reserve chairs being interviewed, and they were being interviewed about inflation. And so they addressed this in the press conference here later on throughout the video, where they talk about how, you know, the inflation wasn't actually being caused by the Biden administration is trying to argue that the inflation hasn't been caused by Joe Biden and his horrible policies, and that it is in fact the fault of Russia and Putin and this whole Ukraine issue that's been going on. When in reality, the federal chairman of the Federal Reserve said that no, Ukraine has nothing to do with what's going on with inflation right now and the economy right now. So clearly we have a lot of gaslighting going on, them trying to point fingers at anyone and everyone but themselves. Meanwhile, as if the pandemic wasn't enough of a problem for our economy, where literally tons of mom and pop businesses went out of business. People had to shut their doors. They couldn't continue to run their business. And many of these big corporations like Walmart, Target, big grocery store chains, they were allowed to remain open. But many of the small stores, restaurants, etc., they had to close their doors, and it made many businesses go under. People lost their entire life savings because of this. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see that happen. And in many of the areas that had just been hit by these riots, these George Floyd riots, were, you know, predominantly in African American or Black American communities, where people had their businesses burnt and smashed and really affected adversely. So Democrat policies are bad for small businesses. They're bad for business in general. They're bad for the economy. We saw what's been going on in San Francisco and many of these blue cities where they let crime run rampant. They let people go and rob businesses, and that then forces the businesses out of the area. Walgreens and CVS's have been leaving San Francisco. Many people in the community have started to want to recall their mayors and recall their district attorneys. This is because they're starting to see the one-to-one correlation with voting blue, voting Democrat is bad for business. So as if it couldn't get any worse, really and truly, Joe Biden is talking about a second pandemic, which I'm just going to say, I think that closing down the entire U.S. economy in the name of a virus that's, you know, pretty similar to a cold, okay, a coronavirus that's pretty similar to a cold and has a very low statistical mortality rate, was the stupidest thing that we've ever done in our country. Shutting all those businesses down, the lasting impact that it's had on our economy. Not only that, but the impact it has had on the global economy, where there are literally global food shortages and crises going on because of first world nations shutting down. And you think it's bad here, it's even much worse in these other countries. And so we have to think about what we do and how that has lasting effects and the consequences of those actions. And these Democrats, they don't care. It's not just Democrats though, because you have some rhinos in league with them. It's really these elites, these establishment deep state hacks. They don't care what they have to do. They don't care how many people die. They have to maintain their control and their power. That is what it is about. And we know that the 2020 election, they put in place a lot of these loopholes and these exceptions in the name of a coronavirus pandemic. They used various emergencies powers that they had in order to put in these mail-in Dropbox ballots all throughout these cities that were essentially swing states and swing cities that typically could go blue or red. So they focused a lot of their efforts putting those mail-in Dropbox ballots. They pushed to really have more mail-in ballots, which is where a lot of leeway is. Essentially, you don't actually have to have a physical person going up to the voting place and actually presenting there, signing and filling out a ballot. You could have mules essentially running around and just stuffing ballots in these boxes. And the movie 2000 Mules with Dinesh D'Souza really shows how they were able to do that and how they were able to document 2,000 of these mules hitting up multiple drop boxes a night. Okay, they would just make their rounds multiple times, and many of these mules would be going in the dead of night. They'd be going between, on average, 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. Who the heck goes and votes at midnight or at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning? Give me a break. You can't say that there wasn't something nefarious going on there, okay? Sorry. And not all of those Dropbox ballot sites had security cameras put in place. In fact, I went out there to cover the Wisconsin hearing where True the Vote presented a lot of their data and their evidence before the legislature there. And what the Democrats sitting there in that hearing actually admitted, I couldn't believe it. Yes, we were supposed to put up security cameras, and we didn't. Yes, we were not allowed to have these vote in the park illegal events, but we did it anyway. Yes, these things are not allowed by law, the vote drop box ballots, the vote drops or whatever, those drop bins. They're not allowed. But because of COVID, that's what opened up all of these permissions. And so that's what the American people were so weary about going up into the 2020 election. You heard Trump and other people in general talking about how they were concerned about the 2020 election and that they were concerned it was going to be rigged and stolen and that there was going to be a lot of discrepancies. Why? The mail-in ballots, okay? The large effort of mail-in ballots. The shoving all the usual elderly people that run the polls. On average, you look at the demographics, the statistics, it's typically elderly people that are volunteering, retirees volunteering to go work at the voting polls, okay? So what did they do? They told them, go stay home because of COVID. You don't want to get sick. You don't want to die. And they fear-mongered them into staying home. Then they put a large effort into having union workers all staff the polls. So the large majority of people who were working at the polls and the voting locations were union workers, which we all know that the AFL-CIO is very much in league with the Democrat Party, very much in league with Joe Biden and everything else. So this is the problem now. When we hear Joe Biden talking about there's going to be a second pandemic in the fall, gee, how convenient is that? I wonder if we're going to have some of the same emergency exceptions that allow them to have the same rules for this upcoming midterm election as they did in the 2020 election. Let's listen to Joe Biden, this clown.
Are you confident I know you're looking for more money from Congress for this vaccine campaign and for COVID funding going into the fall. How much of the supply of vaccines for these small children is there, and how many of the nation's kids will you be able to get vaccinated before you need more money from Congress?
Well, we'll get through at least this year. We do need more money, but we don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic. We have to think ahead.
Yeah, so we need more money for the second pandemic. And all this talk about a second pandemic coming this fall. Meanwhile, Joe Biden and the Democrats have been out there just now starting to vaccinate young children. They just recently opened up for children as young as 6 months old. 6 months to 4 years old are now able to get the COVID-19 vaccines. This was approved by federal regulators and they authorized the COVID-19 vaccines for young children. Now, these vaccines have had many side effects. We're talking myocarditis and a long list of other issues, people having blood clots, strokes, heart attacks. Like young people, young physically fit boys on average, dropping dead, okay, and developing myocarditis. It's for life. It's not just a temporary thing. You get myocarditis, you have it for life, and it is horrible to see people, their entire careers and athletic careers being destroyed over a vaccine. So children who are much smaller, have much, weaker constitutions in general, they're just going to start vaccinating them. We don't know how their little livers are going to process this. We don't know how their bodies are going to react. When we know that statistically young children like this, they are very unlikely to even have an adverse effect if they get COVID. Most children that get COVID-19 are asymptomatic. They don't have any symptoms. It doesn't affect them. Only like a tiny fraction of a minority of young children between these ages, 6 and 5, that actually contract COVID-19, hardly any of them actually die from it. I mean, the mortality rates are very, very low. So why risk children having adverse events and adverse reactions to a vaccine for a virus that's very unlikely to actually cause them any serious harm or any serious injury? And we don't even know how their bodies are going to respond. What's the long-term ramification? We're going to sign our kids up to be guinea pigs. Really? Guinea pigs for a new experimental mRNA gene therapy vaccine? I think that these parents that are doing this are insane. They are literally insane. They're like, oh yeah, I want my child to go get vaccinated with an experimental vaccine that's been rushed in the name of emergency authorizations. I want my child to be a guinea pig for a virus that they're very unlikely to die from or get serious illness from, mind you. Very, very, very unlikely. And a virus that's already pretty much on the tail end from what we know. All right? Like, I thought things were supposed to be going back to normal. No. They have more vaccines to distribute. We can't get back to normal because Big Pharma's just making way too much money on all this. They're going to continue to milk this for all it's worth. They know the power in peddling that fear to the masses, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to keep pushing this COVID fear so we can keep making trillions of dollars selling and pushing vaccines when they have zero liability. If your child gets injured from any of these vaccine manufacturers have no liability. Okay? They have immunity from liability. You have to sue in a special vaccine court. And then you're allotted some money from these judges, and it's really coming out of the American taxpayer pocket, not out of these big pharmaceutical companies' pockets. Okay? They are immune to liability. So that's a big problem. They kill your child, they cause injury to your child has myocarditis for life. You can't do anything about it, unfortunately. So we know that the first pandemic and the shutdown, where we had all these countries shutting down everything, was bad for the economy. Really, globally, it was bad for the economy. And we had warned that this was likely to cause food shortages and people to literally starve to death in third world countries. And that is exactly what's going on right now. Exactly what's going on. It says already 20 million people on the brink of starvation. So it's even more than that. This is just in Russia. And really, it's sad because they're trying to blame this all on Vladimir Putin and Russia, when it's completely not the case. This is because of all of the global shutdowns. Okay? The global shutdowns is what's causing the global food crisis. Okay? And so Russia has said, hey, the West is spreading lies about the cause of the world's food crisis right now. It's not us. This is something that we don't really have much to do with. She says it's a lie. Such accusations are complete lies. Zakharova said, sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. So the West can supply all these arms to Ukraine, but for some reason, nothing can be taken out of Ukraine. The United States and European Union members, which are supplying arms to Ukraine, have accused Russia of stoking a food crisis by preventing grain exports from Ukraine, which accounts for about 1/10 of global wheat exports. So they really export a small percentage, not very large percentage, of the world's food or wheat, essentially, and yet they're being blamed for everything. When I'm sure Russia has their own economic problems right now. It's just Russia, right? Russia. Russia has drawn the ire of the global world government because it doesn't want to go along with their plans, essentially, and therefore they want to blame things on Russia. Look, I'm not some lover of Russia, but I do think it's pretty ridiculous how they like to point fingers at everyone else except themselves. This is just illustrating how they need to take some accountability for what they've done to destroy the global economy and what they're continuing to do to hurt the economy in various nations, including the economy in the U.S. If we had a different president in office right now, like President Trump, I'm sure that we would be doing much better economically. Why? Because of the policies, okay? This is documented in cities all across the United States. If you go to a red city, on average, they're doing good. They're doing good for business. Businesses like to move to those areas because why? Because the policies, the regulations allow business to flourish and to do well. The blue cities, they're just massive shitholes. Sorry, but they are. They are massive shitholes. And crime is rampant. Businesses close their doors and want to leave those areas. You have California having homeless crises where we have hundreds of thousands of people homeless and living on the streets. Yet these California Democrats, senators, governors, etc., like to prance around like they are these philanthropic people that like to help the needy and help the poor. No, they like to keep the needy in the state that they're in so that they can justify more money in their name. It's like the scams with the Hillary Clinton, the Hillary Clinton Foundation, the Hillary Clinton campaign, how in Haiti they said, oh, please help all these poor children, these families who have been made to be homeless in Haiti because of this natural disaster. When you actually look at how much money actually went to those families, those children, it was like a fraction of nothing, okay? It was hardly any of the money actually went to those people. It's pocketed by the foundations. In the same way, that's what these Democrat politicians do with these federal resources. And who's footing the bill? We're footing the bill. The American taxpayers are the ones having to foot the bill for the Democrats and their charity projects, which they keep them as charity projects because it perpetuates more money, more federal resources. They don't actually want to solve the problems, okay? The real way to solve the problems is to help people get jobs, help them become financially independent, help them to have a lower cost of living by driving inflation down. Everyone loses with inflation except really the rich people. The really, really rich people actually benefit with inflation to some degree, but the poor people do not benefit with inflation, okay? It is not a good scenario. We know that the cost of everything has been going up. And we're talking about most of the stuff we have in stores these days is not even made in America anymore. It's like made in China. And so on average, it's much cheaper, right, in China. But because our dollar is now having less buying power, it's just, it's a mess. It is a mess what we're dealing with right now. And it's sad at the same time. So I do think there are some things that we can do going up to the midterm, okay? And I think that we have a bit of an uphill battle in that right now the left wing has complete dominance over tech, really. Silicon Valley elites, they have the dominance over tech, hence why most of the content, the videos I put up, it gets, the algorithms suppress it. Can't tell you how many times people have come onto my videos and said, wow, I haven't seen your videos, or you haven't posted anything in forever, and you haven't even seen all the recent videos I've been posting. Well, because they're not being shown it. The algorithm is not allowing it to appear in their feed. So just because I have on YouTube, for example, like 450,000 subscribers, that's all people that want to see my videos. They want to see my stuff, yet they're not being allowed to. They're not being shown that it even exists. So really, you have to just know to check back in, right? But also share the videos, share the content to try to break the algorithms. So we're in an uphill battle in that way, that they have dominance over tech. They also have dominance over the media, okay? There's Fox News, but Fox News, their biggest advertiser of Fox News is Big Pharma. So you think you're going to get any truth pertaining to COVID and vaccines from Fox News? No, not a chance. You're only going to have pundits sitting up there that are willing to push the narrative that is okay with their advertisers. All right, so that's a problem in itself. But you also have the fact that they have dominance not just in tech, but in the Hollywood entertainment industry, the movie industry. They can make movies to push their political ideas and propaganda and programming into the minds of American people to try to get them to naturally identify with more of the LGBTQ progressive ideologies through their films that they make. And that's things like what they're doing with this whole Buzz Lightyear movie, where they have the lesbian kiss scene in there. Okay, so this is what they have. They have tons of tools at their discretion. And what do we have? What do we, the American people, have? We have powers in numbers, okay? We can pick and choose what we support at the end of the day. And believe it or not, that actually has a huge impact, okay? When people just didn't show up to go see that Buzz Lightyear movie, when people just stayed home and were like, you know what, I'm not going to go watch that movie, or I'll watch a different movie like Top Gun, for example. When people do that, they have to listen. That means the next time you have big producers in Hollywood pushing for woke movies with woke ideologies in it, they have to think again. In fact, they originally weren't going to have that scene with the lesbian kiss scene in the Buzz Lightyear movie, but after everything that happened with Disney in Florida and the battle with DeSantis and how Disney was upset about the parental rights and education bill, which really is just giving parents more rights over what their children are subjected to in education. It's not a don't say gay bill. It actually, nowhere in there does it say you can't say the word gay or whatever. It's just letting parents have that choice. It's actually ensuring parents have a right, right? When the real issue was arguing that parents shouldn't have a right, and that therefore the school, the government, the public education system has more of a right to your children than you do, in that they can subject your children to things you don't consent to or you don't approve of. So it's a key thing that we have parental rights, right? So of course they try to twist that in whichever way, but they originally weren't going to have that scene. They had removed it. And then after the big fight, Disney was so peeved, they put it back in there. And now they're realizing what a big mistake that was when their film literally bombed. on the box office weekend, and hardly anyone went to go see it. So that is another way to affect them, is essentially boycotts, not supporting certain things financially, or supporting things financially. Those are all things that we can do as a whole. Just like when we saw how people all supported the truckers in Canada, the Canadian truckers. They were so upset about that. They even went to such a large extent to try to shut them down by making it so that they couldn't receive the money from, what was it, GoFundMe. GoFundMe said, oh, originally they said they were just going to take all these people's money and then they were going to donate it to other charities. And people were like, are you insane? You're stealing my money. That is fraud. Okay. And then they had to go back on that and said, okay, well, you can all get your money back, and then whatever money nobody claims, then we'll donate to other charities of the truckers choosing, right? And the truckers should just be like, oh, we choose our charity as our choosing, right? But of course they wouldn't allow that. So then people had to do another fundraiser on a conservative-owned fundraising site. And then, of course, the Canadian government tries to stop the money from getting there, and they start to crack down on people who receive the money into their accounts, and they just go through this elaborate way to try to shut the people down. Why? Because they know how powerful that is. That's why they have to try to shut it down through illegal means. They know how powerful it is. So the more we do it and the more we try to come up with ways around it, the better. All right? The fact that they even had that other conservative-owned donation or charity site was important, because if we just rely on their stuff, that's when we have a problem. Now, let's talk a little bit also about the tech data collection issues facing America right now. I found this pretty interesting when I was on my Twitter account. I saw it says, Twitter's use of your personal information for tailored advertising, right? So here's them talking all about how they use your phone numbers, your email addresses, and your information from your cell phones, of course, to then target you with ads and things that they know that you're going to like. Because why? Because they use all that to spy on you. Okay? This is what they do. All right? This is how they push ads at you. It's so creepy, but yet it is so it's becoming so widely accepted. Like, oh, it's no big deal. You know, it's no big deal. We just spy on you. Do you remember when it was such a big deal when everyone was talking about, oh, the government spies on you, right? The whole Snowden story. Such a big deal. The government spies on everyone. The NSA is spying on everyone through our phones, through our devices. Oh my gosh, it's such an invasion of privacy, which it is, right? But back then, people actually cared about their privacy. See, now we've all just become so complacent with our privacy being violated that even now when private corporations, which could have whatever motives, really, nefarious motives, etc., they sit here and just collect everyone's data, and hey, but we just are using it for ads, just to push ads, you know. It's disturbing. It kind of reminds me of when the 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, all that stuff was becoming really trendy and popular, and everyone was going out there and just like, here's my DNA. I want to see where my roots originate, which who knows how accurate that really is. I saw a couple videos where you had twins submit their DNA and actually have different results with like showing different areas or vicinities, which who knows what that's all about. But the reality is people were just, sure, it's a trend. Let me just give my DNA to these companies, which then the companies said they had reserved all these specific rights about it, and they retained the ability to have your DNA. And so people were signaling people about that. Like, hey, that's kind of sketchy. You might want to not do that. You might want to be careful about it. And then, lo and behold, there was that issue where they ended up selling their large bank of data and genetic data to third-party companies. And it's just like, wow, you know, who knows what that's all doing? Who knows if that's going into the hands of health insurance companies so they can genetically profile people and then therefore give people higher health rates or whatever based on their genetics. There are so many ways that our data and our biometrics, everything can be used against us. And so I think that it's so important for us to protect our privacy in itself. We have to think smarter, guys. We really have to be better about protecting our privacy. And especially if we're not even just going to do it for ourselves, for our children, we need to be protecting our children's privacy and making sure they're not just giving that all up on these social media sites. Speaking of social media sites, it seems like the bot activity has been off the charts today, especially on my various platforms. Tons of bots, and this just really, it illustrates exactly what I've been talking about with IIA activities, bots, how they have these bot farms that literally, it's like bots pushing out the exact same sentence, and then you block the bot, and then it's literally just another one pops up right in its place, pushing the same one and the same one, and over again. And it's like, this is what they do. They literally have massive bot farms. I kid you not, they have massive bot farms, and it's just one person in here hitting all, with different fake accounts, using bots to try to steer a narrative, to engage in psychological warfare, to try to control the narrative, to try to discredit me in some way, shape, or form. So these are the tools that they have on these social media platforms, and largely I would say left-wing dominated platforms, and the left really has I would say they have a control and they have a dominance in many facets, in many ways. So these are things we have to address going forward. We cannot continue to be this way if we're going to want to continue to fight and win these battles that we're facing. We can't allow the enemy to have these upper hands on us in general. So we need to figure out ways to combat that. Now, we know that if they do these COVID restrictions again in the midterms, because Biden has a second pandemic, I think that the key thing would definitely be for more people in general to just go volunteer to work at the voting locations, to be poll watchers. Definitely, because at least you can see something if there's shady business going on. But the reality is, when we talk about some of the electronic voting discrepancies and the way they use these electronic voting machines, they have certain abilities to do things over these voting machines and with technology that we can't really do too much about, to be honest. So we need to figure out ways to talk to our representatives, talk to our leaders, and demand that something be done. That we definitely need to change the way the voting happens in this country right now. We need to throw out these electronic voting machines in general. I mean, it's just, there's too much inaccuracies and too many vulnerabilities essentially. When I had that whistleblower leak a bunch of stuff to me pertaining to the Kentucky gubernatorial race, that became very apparent looking at the data logs, audit logs, all the stuff that they had given. And I actually went down to Kentucky after, and I met with ASOG, which they are one of the main groups that was doing most of the election auditing, so to speak, or investigations into the 2020 election this time around, which I think that they were kind of anticipating that this was going to happen in 2020. So they were watching the dry run in 2019. And I actually went down there and I actually met with them, and they kind of seem to have a pretty big handle on how this all goes down. And so what I will say is that some of these Republicans, these rhinos, have their own actual interests in these electronic voting machines, these companies, etc. So like Mitt Romney's son, for example, in Hart Intercivic. And so we have to just overhaul and revamp the whole thing. Really, we have to revamp it. We need to figure out some kind of voter ID, some way of authenticating and verifying our vote. I'd like to be able to look up and see what my vote was somewhere so that I can cross-reference that. So we definitely have to figure something out there because, you know, they want to say, oh, you can't have voter ID, that's gerrymandering, or that's racist. People of all colors and creeds can have an ID. Okay, you have to have an ID for virtually anything else. When people go sign up for anything practically today, you have to have a driver's license or an ID. You can't fly on an airplane without an ID. Okay, so that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Of course, Americans should have voter ID. That would really cut down on a lot of this. But the Democrats won't have it. Of course, they're flooding more and more immigrants into the southern border. And it's really and truly because they want the votes. They want the votes. And so all of what we're seeing right now, really, the way the Biden administration is going about addressing these gas prices with these federal gas tax holidays, all of that is just for the midterms. The January 6th hearings that we're seeing, the clown show we're seeing, that is all for the midterms. This is all about steering the minds of the American people. I don't know how to say it any better than that. It's narrative control. It's a war for your mind. It literally is a war over your mind. Okay? And if they can steer your mind to believe certain things or think certain ways, they're in control. You're not in control. So definitely always exercise critical thinking. Always do research. Always cross-reference, cross-check things. And most importantly, just think for yourself. Don't just go along with whatever the narrative is you see on the mainstream media, which I know most of you guys watching, you already do this, right? So most of you guys are very in the know. You stay up on things. You're educated people, or you're just very smart naturally and generally. And you see through these things, okay? But we have to think about how we're going to reach out to the other side and how we're going to reach out to other people, because that is what is key. We have to be able to share this information with other people so that they can also have their minds open. They can see through the lies. They can actually interpret what they're seeing on the mainstream media. Because before, it's like when you aren't given the interpretation and you're just taking in what you're seeing on the mainstream media, it's really easy to be fooled. But when you actually start showing people how they do what they do, that's when people can actually, it's like you can't unsee it. It's almost like in that movie, They Live, when he puts on the glasses and all of a sudden he sees everything and he cannot unsee it because it's like, whoa, all of a sudden I see the billboards and what the advertising actually means. And I see these like demonic people, right? This is what we need to do. We need to reach across the aisle. We need to reach other people. We need to do that. So please share videos, share articles, share this video. Get the information out there while we can on these platforms. They've largely been trying to shut down our ability to reach each other. It's not just me. I've not been the only one that's been shadow banned, suppressed with their algorithms, demonetized. Okay, it's not just me. I know individual people, everyday people that are being put in like Facebook jails or temporary suspensions, and they are also being targeted with their algorithms as well. You better believe that you're all in a database too, right alongside me. Okay? So we have to work together as a team to go about stopping these evil people that want to do this to us. All right? We have to go about it. And so that's why I've been so solutions oriented. I've been like really just how can I come up with solutions to problems rather than just, because it gets old. I'm not going to lie, guys. It gets old sitting here and just looking at all of the problems, looking at all the chaos going on, the clown show that is in the media, the way it's all set up through the tech, and the way they have literally a grid, a controlled grid of dominance, like a prison system or something, practically. It's like a grid that we're all locked under, a glass ceiling, okay? So it gets frustrating for me to just see it all and to not be able to do something about it. And I know you all are frustrated too in the same way. Like, I speak to so many people about these things and they're like, oh, what do we do? We're all frustrated. Like, we need to do something about these things because we can see it. So what do we do? Right? What do we do? You know, I'm only one person. I am only one person, and I only have so much capacity to do things on my own. That's why I need you guys. I need your help, and I need your support. I need you guys to work with me, and I'll work with you, and we all just figure out a way to team up together and solve these problems. So I actually want to hear input from you guys. So if you guys want to go to millennialmillie.com, if you guys have any suggestions, any ideas on what we could do about these problems that we're facing, go to millennialmillie.com. Okay, I'll show you right here. Which you can see that we're live right now on there. So it's like, hi. Okay, so go to millennialmillie.com and go on the contact form and write me a message. Write me a message if you have input, ideas, all of that. All right. I want to start being able to do the live show again where I can have callers and call in, and you guys can call in. So I might do that soon. If I can get more support from you guys, that would be great, because then I can do that, because that call-in program, it charges money to do it, but it's better because it screens calls and it has like a queue, and but they charge like every minute or something. So, you know, if you guys want to support millennialmillie.com by making a purchase or donating on Subscribestar, those are all ways that you can help support my operation so I can continue to do these things. I need your guys' support. I know that people are not doing too well. People are uneasy about the economy, uneasy about these things. But, you know, I need support too in order to be able to run my operation, in order to be able to take callers. All these things require money essentially to do. So I do need support in that way from you guys. And so if you guys want me to be able to continue doing this journalistic work, please support me on Subscribestar or at millennialmillie.com. You can get a shirt or a hat or a poster. You could subscribe on Twitch, which I don't do my live stream every day or every day of my show, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, on YouTube and Facebook. So sometimes you guys get me on YouTube or Facebook, sometimes you don't, but you always will get me on Twitch. And with Twitch, you can go and watch back however much you want when you subscribe on Twitch. So there you go. You can subscribe on Twitch, and that's how you can watch the show. Or if you just go to millennialmillie.com, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m., you'll be able to watch the show live for free. And so at the end of the day, it is just most important that we just get the information out there. And that's why a lot of times you guys see me, and I still do the live streams on YouTube and Facebook, because it's really like, I just need to get the information out. Okay. It's that important that I have to just do that. So, all right. And then, of course, updates with QUX. You could go to QUX.tv. And I know on QUX, they have a Telegram. So you guys could go to the Telegram on QUX, which is pretty cool. There's quite a bit of people on there, and everyone's just sharing their thoughts, experiences, and little things that they've learned and how they build their portals and everything else. I know that the Marketplace is scheduled to be unlocked at the end of this, like before the end of this month. And so that's actually really exciting. So you'll be able to post your products. If you're a small business owner or merchant, you can actually sell your products on there and advertise on there and create your own ads and everything else. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited, definitely excited. So QUX.TV, guys, QUX, why? Because like I said, I'm tired of just sitting here and complaining about the problems and not having an actual solution. Okay? That's why. So, and what's actually alarming to me is why more people aren't doing that. We see a lot of people in the conservative world, and they just complain about things. They talk about what's trendy. They do whatever is trendy. They really copycat each other like crazy in general, most of them. But why don't we see more people actually coming up with solutions? Right? We need solutions, okay? And that's why I'm interested in hearing from you guys. So if you guys have any solutions, other than obviously QUX really addresses the tech problems with big tech and their tech dominance, which is key, okay? And it's even going to be more awesome when QUX comes out with their phones. But we obviously need other solutions as well, directly pertaining to the upcoming midterms and some of the other many things that we're up against. Okay? So I do appreciate your guys' input. I appreciate your guys' sincere contributions and your willingness to fight for our country and fight for our freedoms and our rights. Because if we don't fight back, if we don't fight for our rights, we are not going to keep our rights. Okay? I mean, our ancestors' blood was spilled for these rights. And we better do something to maintain them. I mean, our ancestors literally died in vicious fights, wars, legs being blown off, arms being chopped. I mean, literally bloody carnage. Our ancestors gave everything, sacrificed everything so that their children, their grandchildren, so that we in the future could have and maintain our rights today. So I think the least that we can do is just participate to some degree, right? And get together and put our heads together and decide what we're going to do going forward to take on these tyrants. They said, what, you have a republic if you can keep it. So if we don't do much to keep it, we're not going to have it. All right. So thank you guys for another wonderful broadcast. I see you all sharing some love in the comment sections. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you guys popping in and your constructive comments on here. If you guys have any questions, I guess I'd be willing to take a couple questions on here if they're appropriate questions, mind you. So I'm going to look at the live feed here right now and see if you guys have any questions. Feel free to ask. Let me see. Let's go to Twitch first. I'm going to go to Twitch first for questions. Oop. Yeah, somebody said, we live in a selfie generation. People are more interested in vanity than being warriors. That's right, and we need more warriors. We definitely need more warriors. We need more people to step up. I know there are other people, but I can't do it without you guys. And really what I'm doing is a sacrifice to a large extent. Like, I get crap. My name gets drugged through the mud for stepping out there and for doing the right thing and for addressing these issues and calling out what the left wing's doing with their narrative. I've been attacked multiple times. Hit pieces, lies being made up about me. I've had even people within the conservative realm, which I thought were my peers, which I thought were people that I could have as allies. They came out and attacked me as well. And I think a large part of that's just jealousy, people being very competitive and whatnot. And it's just sad that that's the state that we're in. We need to be working together. We need to be coming together right now, uplifting each other. So that is exactly it. Someone said, what is a warrior exactly? Well, a warrior is somebody who's willing to stand up for something that's right when others would cower. People that are willing to speak out. People that are willing to participate. People who are willing to have some type of sacrifice in order for good to prevail, essentially. That's what I would say a warrior is. Okay, let's see. Someone said, if you want to broaden your reach, invite Dems to your show and debate the topics. That's a good idea. I could try to do that. I'm not sure how many will actually want to go, but you never know. What is a woman? Somebody asked, what is a woman? Okay, a woman is a womb man. A woman is a human being with XX chromosomes. That is a woman. A woman is a female. A woman is a person that usually, and not in all instances, but usually can get pregnant, usually can give birth. A woman is a woman. I mean, I think it's ridiculous how the left can't even define what a woman is. It's like our biology books did that just fine. Did you not pay attention in biology class? Okay. A woman is clearly you know the minute a baby's born, it's a woman because you look there and you say, okay, there are the genitals, and the genitals clearly show this is a female child or this is a male child. It's very clear in most instances. And of course, there are those anomalies, right, which they like to bring up here and there, where people are born with some kind of mutations or deformities, or essentially something in between. But for the most part, we all know what a woman is. Okay? We all know what a woman is. Definitely. I think the best way to go about it is XX chromosomes, right? Because with today's modern technology, not technology, but like modern medicine, these surgical procedures they have where people can literally have bottom surgeries, they can take hormones, they can do all kinds of things to alter their outward physical appearance. And some of these people, it's like you can't even tell what their original sex was because they've been altered to such a large degree. And you even just see that across the board with like plastic surgery in general, where you see women going through these crazy plastic surgery transformations and whatnot. But I think the best way to really go about it is to just look at the chromosomes. Chromosomes aren't going to lie. You know, you're going to have the XX chromosome or the XY chromosome. So I would say it's safe to say that a woman is a human with 2 X chromosomes. So there you go. Someone said there are XXY males. Yes, there are XXY males. That is true. And that's why you can actually have a male and a female identical twin, because if you had 2 XXY eggs that then split, technically one could lose and drop a Y, and you would have XX and XY. But even if you have XXY, you still have the presence of the Y chromosome. So a human with an XXY chromosome, as long as that Y is present, that means that they're going to be male. Okay? And it's really interesting when they look at like the genetic lineages of the Y and what the hell. Every single guy out there carries that same Y, that his exact line of all the men in his family, all the paternal grandfathers in his family carry that exact Y and pass it down to each other. So it's very interesting how that all how that all goes down. Is Bill Gates' ex-wife a woman? I don't know. I don't know much about Bill Gates' Bill Gates' wife. I do think it's rather hilarious though that he's been memed with his pregnant man belly, but you know, sometimes that's just what happens with men when they get older. Let me see. The Y chromosome makes the difference, which the left wants to destroy at all costs. That's right. The Y chromosome does make a large difference. It definitely does. So I think if we really hone in on the genetics with that, then that's where we shut the argument down. Like, what is a woman? Define what is a woman. Okay, a woman is a human with XX chromosomes. That's a woman. So if we define it even that, like the most bare minimum, boom, therefore, you know, they can't try to just change their outward appearance and say that they're somehow now a woman. Right? And, you know, to some degree, it's like there are anatomical advantages that biological men have, especially in sports. Okay? So it's really unfair and it's not right that these girls who are competing in girls' sports or women's sports are just being annihilated by their male to female, whatever, trans people that are competing against them. And in most instances, those trans athletes would be at the very bottom if they actually competed in their gender proper category, okay? In their proper category. Oop, what's going on with the audio? Yeah, so in most instances, those trans athletes, they are not the best. They don't compete high where they're genetically supposed to be competing, but they go and they just rake these girls over the coals and take all these gold medals, take all these awards, trophies, scholarships, and then the girls are kind of left there in second place or even third place, who knows, but they're just left there, and it's really stealing opportunities from girls when you have these trans athletes competing with them in sports, because it's like you have this like 6 foot tall guy or something that's wearing a wig, and it clearly looks like a guy in most instances, and then you see these tiny girls standing next to it. It's just not right. It's not right. It's definitely not fair. And then there's this battle between the old school feminists and the trans athletes that's been going on within the left wing as well, which is interesting because they're definitely infighting over the whole issue. Look at this. Look at this. Come on. World Swimming votes to restrict transgender athletes from women's competitions. I mean, is this even a trans person? It just looks like a guy. I mean, come on. How is that going to be fair? I'm sure it's not, definitely. They say because they're interfering with the hormones and that they're lowering testosterone levels, that somehow it's fair. But there are like serious anatomical differences between men and women in that our hips are different. So one way men and women are different is men have narrower hips. Okay? So when they're running, it's more efficient and they can actually run faster because of their narrower hips. Women have wider hips. Why? Because women are designed to be able to hold a child in their body and to be able to birth a child through their pelvis. So our pelvis structure is actually very different. If you look at the bone structure of men and women, our pelvis structure is very different. So in that, women tend to wobble, right? We tend to wobble a little bit, which in some ways people say, oh, that's like a sexy strut, or girls kind of walking with their hips swaying. And that's, in most cases for women, that's natural because of our hips and the way we are. And we all know that when women are pregnant, that really gets, that exacerbates largely. We're definitely like waddling like penguins. But with men, I know you'll see this sometimes in the drag community or the trans community when they're trying to dress and appear female. They'll like overly try to wiggle their hips or their butts to try to mimic that. But that's because that's women's natural strut, and therefore we're not as fast, okay, because of that. But that's just because we were designed to be able to, you know, birth a baby. So that's one way we're different. Also, the curvature of the thigh bone is very much different from a woman and a man's. Men tend to have more straight thigh bones. It's a straight thigh bone is better for running, okay, than a curved thigh bone. And the reason our women have curved thigh bones is because of our hips being wider. Our thigh bones actually curve, so they can actually find the skeletal remains of a person and know that that is a female looking at the thigh bone, typically because of our curvature of our thigh bone. The way our pelvis is designed is entirely different. Our bodies are different to a large degree. Therefore, it is not fair for men, okay, born man, that then decides they want to call themselves a female, to compete with biological women in sports. It is not fair. It is not right. And I just think that it's too bad these girls are having to miss out on scholarship opportunities because everyone wants to be so woke. Everyone has to be woke and say, oh, we're just gonna, you know, we're just gonna pretend. Let's all play pretend. I feel like we're dealing with children in this day and age. Children. Okay, so let's see. Any other questions? Okay, so someone says narrow thigh bones are good for jumping as well. That is right. Women have less muscle and more fat on average. No comparison. It's stupid even to argue about it. That was from Sigma 6. True. Yes, women have less muscle. We don't have testosterone, or even if we do, we have small amounts, right? And so therefore, we're not going to be as physically strong, and testosterone really gives people a boost in endurance, all of these things. And so yeah, it's not fair. But obviously their argument, when they really hone in on the hormones and the testosterone, their argument is to say, well, we have these trans athletes taking hormone therapies that lower their testosterone levels, therefore it's fair. So by kind of focusing too much on the hormones, that's where they're getting us. So I think it's more key to actually focus in on the bone structure. Okay? So if we focus in on the bone structure, that you cannot change. You can give someone a what is it? A genital reconstructive surgery or whatever, and chop off a guy's you know what, or turn a girl's whatever into a meat sock. I don't know. But you cannot change the bone structure. Okay? You cannot change the bone structure. And there is an advantage in the bone structure. And obviously in the muscles, right? The muscle tone. Okay? Obviously. But see, when you'll go, okay, well, some guys don't have a bunch of muscle. Some guys, you know, can starve themselves and be skinny and emaciated. You know, I think stick to the bone structure, stick to the chromosomes when you're debating the left on these issues. Definitely. Chromosomes cannot be argued with. Bone structure cannot be argued with, for sure. Okay, so... Okay, what in the world? The comment section has gone wild. Apparently I said something. Okay, any other thoughts you guys want to add into here? Oh, so someone said, please do the next stream as a Russian reporter you used to do. We need a laugh. Oh, no. Yeah, I used to do those man on the street sometimes where I pretended to be Russian during the whole Russia conspiracy theory that the left-wing media pundits were pushing for a narrative. That was pretty funny. I don't even remember how I did that. I swear I almost sounded like Borat when I was doing that. You know what I did in order to do the Russian impression, though? It's actually funny. I was watching all these videos of talking like a Russian, right? So I was watching a bunch of videos talking like a Russian, so I could like hear it really well and then practice it. So I actually did a little bit of self-training before going out and doing that, which it did show because in the beginning I really sounded just way too much like Borat, and then it got better. You know, it got better. Some people actually really thought I was Russian though in those man on the streets. That's what's funny about it. Okay, so Randall Hill says trans people are 41% more likely to kill themselves. Bipolar people, 25% more likely to. I give up my firearm so I wouldn't hurt myself, and others trans people should do the same. Save trans lives. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if people should be forced to necessarily give up their weapons because it does say shall not be infringed. So I don't know if I agree with that one. They have to keep the emergency going for power. Yes. That is exactly what that is. When you see Biden talking about, oh, there's going to be a second pandemic, how would you know? How would you know? Can you predict the future, Biden? Can you predict the future, Biden? How would you know there's going to be a second pandemic? It's because they can make it a pandemic if they want to. It's the media. The media will push it like it's a pandemic. When you went in disguise and volunteered for the Dems was so funny. Yes, okay, I did do that during the Hillary Clinton time period, Hillary Clinton running. The Democrat Party there in Ohio, where I live, in Portage County, I went and was like pretending to volunteer, and I went undercover there. And they had like hardly anyone there trying to volunteer. And everyone, from what they were saying, that they were calling pretty much was just like not interested, wanting to hang up. And so they were really, the whole point of that was to show that what the media was reporting was not accurate. Because I knew it wasn't accurate because I was going physically in person to her various events and rallies, and I'm like, there's no way what they're saying is true, that she has some massive amount of turnout and some overwhelming support, and Trump had no support. That's the narrative they were trying to push at the time. And I just wasn't seeing that with my own eyes. And so I decided to go undercover there and just... I dressed pretty ridiculous too. I thought I was dressing like a liberal, but I don't know what I was dressing like. I don't know if I can find the video on here for some of you guys that have not seen it. But yeah, that was pretty funny. And they obviously didn't like that very much. And definitely me being arrested, being retaliated against by that county, which is a blue county, okay? Directly across the street was the Department of Child Services or whatever, where I had to go meet with them after I was arrested pertaining to my kids, where they were trying to take my kids away. And they had a lady there, like the ladies were wearing Turning Portage blue shirts on. I'm like, really? Come on now. So I did feel like it was definitely retaliation because I've done a lot of stuff in that little area. And the Democrats know who I am and they do not like me, okay? Word gets around. Word gets around pretty fast when you start going and doing man on the streets and things like that. And people are being interviewed. Okay, so this was the one that you're talking about. Okay, yeah, they called me up and invited me to that. That was pretty funny. Listen. Oh, man. What in the world is going on? What? Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry for that weird technical difficulty. Continuing. Up on her little website in order to retrieve the time and date for the Philadelphia event, register or whatever to get that information. So I receive a phone call and they're like, we really want you to come help out. Actually, this is it, I think. Democratic Party. Also.
Okay, well, Allison Park's down a little further. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, can we help you?
Hi, I was invited to come here to help out.
That's wonderful. He'll be right back. You want to take a chair there or something? Or
Okay.
just look around?
Yeah, do you mind if I look around?
Go right ahead.
So half the family went to bed and half the family is.
Hi, this young lady came.
So when I first went there, I'm just going to tell you, that was not what I was expecting, okay? I was expecting to turn up to this, volunteer thing for Hillary Clinton, and that there would be, a little bit more people. But, there was no one there, okay? I knew that she didn't have nearly as much support as they were saying in the media, just based on her attendance at her speeches. But it was like a ghost town at this office here where they're supposedly putting on some volunteer event for Hillary Clinton. And then to hear from the people themselves how when they're calling people, they're not getting much interest at all. And it was just like, oh man, a lot of it's fabricated. And invited by, I don't remember his name.
Bill.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Millie.
Millie.
Yeah. So what's the deal?
Okay, we're just calling people to see if there are for us or against us. I just got a refuse that was, yeah, let's just say it was an adamant refusal.
An adamant one? What did they say?
Thank you.
Quit calling here, and then I cleaned it up.
Say if people bring up things they're concerned about her health or just other things the Benghazi thing, or
if they say I'm voting for Trump because Hillary's a liar, then you can get into the fact that she is outlied by Trump by about 300%, and that is well documented. And the lies are not really lies in the first place.
Nothing was marked classified at the time I sent or received it.
All right, all I know is that's different what you said in March.
110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received.
Do you know if there's going to be any more Hillary speaking events here?
I've got to say probably. The entire cast of the West Wing will be around the state. But Bernie was just at Kent State Saturday.
Only 150 people turned out at a Hillary event put on by Bernie Sanders. An event in Canton, Ohio was canceled as well, probably because the low turnout.
We only have about 50 days till the election, and this is a very, very close race, and we're running out of time.
How's it looking so far for Ohio? Just from an inside, kind of working in the campaigns?
Yesterday, polls came out one had Trump by 3.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Basically, we have a script, but you don't need it. What happens more often is they're not home.
Oh.
We only let it, like I say, ring five times or 6. That would be that's my coordinator.
That's a ringtone? Oh my gosh.
Doesn't it sound like fun?
Oh yeah.
By the way, really appreciate your help. Okay, Bill. Enough of that. Every once in a while, you'll catch a live one. When you do catch a live one, you won't know what to say.
I sat here and made a fool out of myself, stuttering. I'm from the Democratic something or another.
And then even if you find one that likes Hillary, right, then what do you say?
Like I say,
There are a few.
There are a few.
I had one lady that was really glad to talk to me, but I think they were retired and didn't want to do anything else.
Yeah. You do run across a lot of forms.
Have you had any Trump people mad?
Yeah.
I think I had one.
Oh, we're also making sure that they're registered to vote.
Do they have to show that they're like ID and other things?
No, we're not allowed to put anything on the registration form. If they mess one up, we just have them try it again, and we have to turn in the messed up ones too, because the Board of Elections will sift through everything and make sure they're not registered twice.
Okay.
I can't tolerate Trump.
I know, I can't stand the look at
Makes me
him.
sick to my stomach.
I can't stand the look at his face.
Mad at me that are going for Trump.
I would just like to ask one person.
So have you ever actually watched one of his speeches?
He is such a buffoon, you know, this smirk on his face. I'd like to smack him right off. And I got to
Would
the
you
point
be
where it
interested
was
in
just
volunteering?
really, literally making me sick. I just can't sit.
This year,
It just totally surprises me when I see a Trump sign. Who in the heck?
Look, I'm gonna go get lunch or something.
Nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Have you seen many? I haven't seen that many Hillary Clinton signs up yet. I've just only seen Trump signs up around.
He says you're not allowed to put them out till 30 days before. Trump's getting his out early.
Oh.
What's
All right, thank you. The fact that I got called from Hillary Clinton's campaign and asked in a desperate way to go and help out with her campaign really shows how desperate her campaign is for help. People are not signing up for help and out there campaigning for her. Ironically, Trump's campaign is just stacked and filled with volunteers wanting to campaign for him. We didn't see that today here when I went undercover and saw inside Hillary Clinton's campaign. This is Millie Weaver signing off for Infowars.com. So that was my Saturday. My phone died, so I had to recharge it. Let's see. Not seeing many other questions on here. Let's see on Twitch. I'm gonna look to see if you guys have any questions here on Twitch, because YouTube is not giving good questions right now. That was so informative about the 2016 election. We all believe the media saying that Hillary was ahead. Yeah, the media kept really pushing that Hillary Clinton was ahead in the polls, and literally everything I was seeing when I was going and covering her events, which a lot of that was happening in Ohio, it was taking place in Ohio. So that was where I was living at the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and cover all these political events. And her rally sizes just weren't on par with Trump's rally sizes. His were definitely much, much bigger. And this report I did really showed how desperate she was to fill up her seats, essentially. And she even went so far as to have high school kids brought into a university in order to make it look like she had turnout with the university. So watch this one. What is going on here? Can you let me in to cover her event? I'm a member of the press. Okay. They're not letting us into the event. They're just claiming that they're at capacity, but you can't even see. They have the doors closed. So we'll see. I mean, does this speak to her events, how staged they looked? I mean, they look like a Hollywood set, the ones that I've been to. So is this one closed off to the press? Because, you know, God forbid me to see and cover, because I myself am a millennial. So not letting Millennial Millie into your event, Hillary, shame on you. The last couple days, we've seen Hillary's website do some really drastic, crazy changes. They had pulled off her scheduled future events list just the day before this Philadelphia event was scheduled, and they did not disclose a direct address. They did not disclose a time, and they said to be determined. We didn't even know whether the event was going to continue happening or not. They just changed it last minute, last night, and the event was scheduled for this morning. They're not allowing people into this event right here. They're only letting certain members of the press in and students of this university and whoever else Hillary Clinton's campaign have bussed in. Take a look over here and look at these mainstream media bus vans and cars that are here that are allowed to cover her event. Despite the website removing the times and location for this event and then putting it up extremely last minute, it seems as though all of these news agencies had some kind of an advance notice of this event, and they had privileged information regarding this event happening here at this university. Let's remember that the last time that we were here for the DNC, there was a massive anti-Hillary protest that Bernie Sanders supporters, as well as even Black Lives Matter supporters, were out protesting against Hillary. They said, don't vote for Hillary, she's killing black people, which we have footage of.
Don't vote for Hillary, she's killing black people!
And now we see that Hillary changed her website up and made it so that the location and the time was not disclosed to the public until the last minute. Could this be an attempt to prevent more anti-Hillary protesters from this neighborhood from coming and voicing their protest against Hillary? By listening to some of the police talking amongst themselves, it appears that they are rerouting Hillary's motorcade. It was supposed to be coming right here, and now it seems like they are moving the police. I don't know where they're rerouting her motorcade to. Let's see if we can find out. Secret Service is right here, and they are clearing an area for Hillary's motorcade, it appears. Hey, did you guys just go and see Hillary speak?
Yeah, we just did.
How was it?
It was really good. It was
So look at them. See the high school kids coming out the back door? They're all lining up in a group together. This was at a university. Hey, did you guys just go and see Hillary speak?
Yeah, we just did.
How was it?
It was really good. It was my first political speech I've seen this year, so I was really surprised about what she said.
Okay, and what about you? Did you see it?
Yeah, I was actually a part of the press crew up in the back, so I got to see everything. It was really awesome. It was really inspiring to see her speak about women and the women who inspired her throughout her life.
So, do you go to school here?
No, I go to school at the Philadelphia High School for Girls. This is our group right here, the whole school.
Not gonna lie, I was kind of annoyed at the time because Hillary Clinton banned me from being in the press room and didn't let me into her event to go cover it. And yet she's letting these high school press kids in. I was like, what the heck? No, Hillary, no. But anyway, you get the point. Like, clearly these are high school kids, okay? And they were walked out the back door, lined up, and they were brought there to make it look like the university was all for Hillary Clinton, and that college kids and that demographic was excited for Hillary Clinton, and that they on their own fruition went to go see her, when in reality it was a field trip. So,
So
was your whole girls group invited to come to this event?
Mm-hmm. We were the only high school invited to come here, so it was a really good experience.
Oh, okay. So this is a high school, I see. So it appears as though these high school kids were all brought into Hillary's event ahead of time as part of some kind of a school trip, like a field trip. They came here all together on the subway, and they do have teachers and chaperones that escorted them here and brought them here. This is a field trip. I don't know if they use these people here for crowd filler or what, or even if they're old enough to vote. So this is very interesting. And it seems like high school press were given priority to even, be inside at Hillary's event, but yet even InfoWars wasn't allowed in. Did you guys watch Hillary's speech?
Yes, we did. She did a great job today. She did a great job.
So what do you think about the recent bombings that have happened in New York and Hillary's policy for, not vetting people from terroristic regions?
I feel like she addressed the issue. I didn't read much about the bombing that took place in New York, but I feel like she did address it properly, and I do support her policy and initiatives to help alleviate some of those pressures and dangerous, drastic things that occur.
So do you think that we should let people, from areas where ISIS is in power and running wild, do you think we should let people from those countries into our country unvetted?
I do. I really do think so, because I think as America and as a democracy and things of that nature that we also proclaim and promote, I think we need to stand by that. And it's unfortunate that those countries have those powers and those issues there, but we can't neglect everyone that is trying to have a new opportunity, because America is a place for new opportunity, and we.
Okay, so at that point in the video, I just kind of go around and interview the students on the campus, and I do show some of the behind the scenes when I get in there. So let's skip to the behind the scenes inside the Hillary event to show you how it looks when they have these staged speaking events. Check it out.
Hillary's stage speaking event with very limited seating shows it was actually more of a private event than anything. Looks like a Hollywood set. Barely any seats. Barely any seating at all. Look at that. There's her campaign working away on how to spin.
Are we ready yet?
How soon do you think we'll be able to get this cut?
Oh, we're going to be done in about 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, that's good. We can link that to the press. They can downlink it on Telstar 401 Transporter 21.
Makes you glad you've lived this long.
So some of you guys who are wondering, I actually snuck in after the event happened. So the reason why the chairs are empty there is because the event was just wrapping up. I showed how the high school students were all brought out the side door. So essentially what they did was they had this big old staged speaking event at a university in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. No, not Pittsburgh. It was Philadelphia, the university there. And they had the kids all come on a subway so that there wouldn't be a school bus, noticeably, right? They had them come on the subway. They marched them in, sat them all down. Teachers basically making them behave, not saying anything they shouldn't be or doing anything they shouldn't be. And then Hillary Clinton has her speech, and of course I get barred from entering because at that point I had already covered several of her other speaking events, and they started catching on that I was not on their side, let's just say, and they started barring me. And so I snuck in though after. I just kind of walked in with some crew people, and I started filming inside of there. And so that's what you're really seeing here is what it looks like inside their little staged speaking events, which of course then the media then goes and says Hillary Clinton had a successful speaking event at a rally or a speaking event packed inside of a Philadelphia university, and people just believe and assume that the people they see there are young college kids from the university who are interested in hearing her speak, who came on their own fruition. Little do they know it was high school kids that were literally brought there as a field trip assignment, and the teachers were there with them, chaperoning them. And meanwhile, the college kids that I actually interviewed at the university, I was asking them if they were going to attend the event, and all of them were saying no, they were too busy with finals and they really could just care less to go. So this is what they do. It really is like wag the dog style. I mean, I'm not kidding, guys. And if you haven't seen the movie Wag the Dog, you seriously have to see it. It really encompasses a lot of politics and how everything's a big show and for narrative control. Watch Wag the Dog if you've not seen it. It is a really good movie, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into politics, so to speak. But yeah, so I mean, I did quite a few of these different things. So if you ever go explore on my YouTube channel, which hopefully I don't get banned, because all of this stuff would just pop off the internet and you won't be able to find it anywhere as of right now, unless you go on QUX, of course. But yeah, it's literally, there's a playlist called Hillary Clinton's Staged Rallies, which is really good. There's some pretty hilarious stuff in here, guys. So make sure you go check that out. Hillary Clinton's Staged Rallies. That is that playlist. There's a couple different good playlists on my YouTube channel. So good stuff. Good stuff. And then there's like the debates, triggerings, all that stuff. Because yeah, I would like to be able to get out there and go do some more man on the street, interview some protesters, all that stuff. It does cost money to be able to drive around and travel and go to these various protests. Like I said, guys, I'm an independent journalist. I saw some of you guys commenting below like, oh, you're still with InfoWars. No, I am not with InfoWars. I am absolutely not supported by InfoWars at all whatsoever. So, some people have said before that they buy iodine or supplements from InfoWars, and that therefore they're supporting me. You're not supporting me by buying supplements or anything at InfoWars. InfoWars does not support me. I am an independent journalist. I'm not really financially supported by any media outlet. I do a show on Lindell TV, but it's literally just they're playing my show on Frank Speech. That's pretty much it. There's no working, no real way of them supporting me, if that makes any sense. So I do need your guys' support because I am an independent journalist. I would like to go cover some of these things. I hear sometimes people saying, hey, I'd like you to go cover some more man on the street, or go out and cover some protests, go out and do some of these things. I would love to do that. I need your guys' support in order to do that. I used to obviously be supported by InfoWars and Alex Jones. I do not work with Alex Jones. I'm definitely putting that disclaimer out there so you guys know that, don't think you're supporting me by going and supporting. I need direct support. I need you guys going to my Subscribe Star. I need you guys going to my website, millennialmillie.com. That's where you guys can actually support me directly in order for me to be able to have finances to be able to go out and cover these things. All right? So millennialmillie.com, guys. Shirts and hats, autographed posters. I can sign a poster for you. I can make it out to whoever you want with a message. So just go ahead and go on there and get a poster, and I will get that to you. There are stickers, there are hats, there are other things on there you could purchase. Tons of good summer t-shirts, guys, and hats. And girls, these pink Shadowgate hats are really cute. So good for the summer as well. Really quality hats. And there's Drain the Swamp shirts as well. So, which we do need to do. We need to drain the swamp. We need to drain the Democrat swamp creatures, the swamp rats, and we also need to drain the rhino swamp creatures. We need to get these rats out of here, get them out of there. No more swamp creatures, drain the swamp, guys. That is our mission. You know, we don't even have to have Trump in the White House in order to do this. This is something that we can do and put an effort to do this upcoming midterm election. So this is a great shirt to wear to advertise that you believe that we should drain the swamp. It will spark up conversations. It's definitely a very high quality shirt. I only have quality shirts, guys. I do not buy any type of garbage. I literally have soft quality shirts with really good quality. This is a high quality 8-color silk screen spot print. I mean, they're quality, and you can wash these shirts a ton and it will stay. That will stay. It is quality. Okay, so get a quality t-shirt and support me at the same time so I can continue to do this journalism. Coming up to midterms, it's going to be really important, key. I really want to be able to get out there and start covering things out on the street, out going places. But you know those gas prices, guys, so hook it up. I need your support for sure so I can continue to do that good work that I did during the 2016 election and during the midterms. And obviously I couldn't do as much as I had wanted to do during 2020 because of COVID and the pandemics, and all the rallies were shut down, everything was shut down, which was by design because they didn't want people seeing what they saw with Hillary Clinton. Okay, I run roughshod over Hillary Clinton. I was following her campaign and I was pointing out how she had barely anyone at her campaign, at her rallies or speeches or whatever. Hardly anyone showing up for her. Trump, so many people is insane. That clear contrast was ever so present in 2016. The reason I believe they wanted to do the lockdown so much during the 2020 election time period was because they could hide Joe Biden in a basement somewhere and say that it was because of COVID-19. So that should be interesting. What are we going to see in the midterms? How is that going to be different from last midterms? What are we going to see in 2024? Hopefully they're not going to try to pull a pandemic out of their pocket at the last minute in 2024 in order to, you know, continue to hide Joe Biden. Guys, I will be surprised, honestly, if they continue to try to run Joe Biden. I think that the plan is that they're just going to go with Kamala. I think that's what the plan is. So, Joe Biden is getting really old, for sure. He's getting really old and senile. He's already been senile. He's already had dementia. So... All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys had a good show today. I hope you enjoyed it. I like responding to you guys in the comments. Let's see. One more good question. Do you feel that the Democrats are trying to change the basic structure of our democracy to preserve their power? Yes, I do. I do think it's also slightly inaccurate just to refer to them as Democrats. Like, I know we use that term a lot, like Democrats, because that's what they're part of the Democrat Party, that political side, so to speak. But if you actually look at it, like original Democrats, like the JFK Democrats, I don't think that they were communists per se. Like, sure, they might have wanted some more social programs, but they weren't these communist progressives that we're dealing with today that have essentially taken over the Democrat Party, so to speak. So it's not really fair for me to continue calling them Democrats, but really I call them Democrats because that is what most people know them as, and it's just the best way to communicate essentially at this time. But really, what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with communist ideology to a large degree, but we're also dealing with the power elites and them wanting to have a global new world order. That is what we're dealing with right now. So it's much deeper than just Democrats. And yes, they absolutely are. It's not that they're willing to destroy our way of government and our system of government in order to get power. It's that they want to destroy it. Okay? They are on an active path to try to destroy it. And yes, they will seize more power in doing that. But it's the end goal for this global new world order that they want. And they don't want us having the Constitution. The Constitution has been their biggest obstacle because we believe in it in our hearts. If they can get us to not believe in it in our hearts anymore, if they can successfully convince us all to willingly give up our rights, where we consent essentially to giving our rights up, that's how they win, okay? Our founding fathers were brilliant. They were geniuses in how they set up our system and how they had the Constitution and how they made every political servant or political government official take a constitutional oath of office. They were genius in doing that, because what it does is the minute they step outside of their oath of office, they actually lose some of the protections that they had from liability, okay? So they lose some of those protections and immunity. So it's kind of genius. Like, they've been trying for quite a while to destroy the way we have our government set up and the Constitution. But as long as the Constitution and our rights, our freedoms remain inside of the hearts of the American people, they can't do anything. So that is why the war is for the minds of the people, because if they can convince us all and brainwash us and make us think these absurd ways, almost like something out of Clockwork Orange, where people think that 2 + 2 can be 3 because you think it can, right? So if they can convince people to have this like moral relativism and this just weird abstract way, twisted way of thinking, they can start to condition the American people, especially the children, to not see the Constitution as something that preserves their rights and protects them, but to see it as the enemy, to see it as the thing that has oppressed them, the thing that they need to get rid of. And that is what they've been successfully doing in the education school, especially the public education school. Why? Because it is heavily dominated and controlled by the left wing, by these progressive Democrats, right? I'll use the word Democrats, but it's really been controlled by a lot of progressives that, I don't know if it's that some of them just buy into the ideologies, but I think that what's happening is a lot of those teachers, those educators, they are being indoctrinated with those ideologies through the universities. So if they have control over the university, and the university is the gateway, so to speak, for people to be in higher positions of authority, right? Like, in order to become a lawyer, you have to pass through university. In order to be a doctor, you have to pass through university. In order to be a teacher, you have to pass through university. And in many ways, many of our politicians are lawyers. They all pass through the universities. Our educators, everything else, right? They're all these social workers, whatever, passing through the university, okay? So they get them at the university level. And that's why we've seen so many of these crazy deranged college kids just going full-blown triggered, melting down, because it's like their brainwashing is having a collapse at that time period, where they're having like a meltdown, and they're so conflicted, and there's so much going on there that they can't handle it, and the people are melting down. And that's why it seems so absurd. And I'm not the only person that's called out the indoctrination of university students at these universities. By many of times, you have university professors in there that are straight up communists. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So Trump was at least addressing this. He was talking a lot about pulling funding from public universities and state colleges that pushed and indoctrinated the university students with political ideologies, and that didn't respect free speech and people's ability to come and protest or have a free speech right on the campus. So yeah, definitely we need to address these things, guys. We need to address these things in order to fight back for the sake of our young people and our minds. And I mean, the best suggestion to parents out there is get active, go to the teacher conferences, go to the PTA meetings, go to the school board meetings, be heard, be loud, voice your opinion, and be willing to call these people out and call them to the carpet. Because if enough people stand up and start calling these people out and saying, you are not going to do this, we're going to vote you off of the school board, that's when they're going to start backing away and backing down. Because there's not much they can do if 200 or 300 angry parents show up at the school board meetings demanding that they are heard and demanding that these officials do something, or else they're going to vote them off the board. That's what they don't want. That is exactly why they tried to demonize the parents that were doing this, because they were being successful in many ways. They were being successful by getting the mask mandates out of their schools, by getting some of the weird sex education materials that they were trying to push on children out of the schools. So this is what we need to keep doing. Press forward. Don't let them try to scare you into submission. We are the warriors of America right now that's going to take back this country. We just have to stand up. There's more of us than there are of them. Trust me on that. Okay? They fudge the numbers. They fudge the polls. They fudge the elections. There's more of us than there are them. If we stop being the silent majority and start being the loud majority, we will take this country back overnight. And most importantly, get politically active. All right, guys, stay tuned. I will be back. I will be back on Friday for another Millennial Millie show at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you check back at millennialmillie.com for my show at 5 p.m. Eastern Time.